need some mic here. There we go. There we go. How's it going? This crowd sounds a little bit rowdier than yesterday. Yeah? Yeah? You guys excited about this? I am. So, how many designers do we have out here? Okay. How many do we have online? Okay. So, yeah, you are in the technical design in today's Blockbuster game panel, and I want to welcome everybody that was able to make it here, and for everybody that's watching the stream and everybody online. Thank you guys all for being here. We have a rock-solid panel this year, so without further ado, let me go ahead and announce our first guest. Is a principal designer at Volition. We were talking last night, and man, he's been making games for almost 15 years now, but he's still just a young lad. He's also a 2011 Full Sail Hall of Fame inductee. Please welcome Jameson Durall. All the way down at the end. Okay, our next guest. He's had a couple of games that he's worked on. Let's see. I think he worked on Red Dead Redemption. Yeah, he worked on that. He worked on Grand Theft Auto 5. His most recent credit is as a senior world systems designer at Bungie, where he worked on a little game called Destiny. He's a 2006 game dev graduate. Welcome, Ryan Paradis. Okay, and last and certainly not least, one down. Game designers don't count real good, but that's last and certainly not least, we have a graduate from back in 2006 as well. And if anybody here follows Full Sail's game development Twitter account at FS Game Dev, you see him on there all the time. He's very active, as is all of our guests, but he's been back to campus many, many times as well. He's a studio design architect at Volition, and this is Rusty Sempsrott. So, gentlemen, how's it going?
Good, good.
I'm more excited, I think, than the majority of the students here because, you know, in career development, we talk to people all the time that want to be designers. And one of the things that has been really cool for me, working with my other advisor, Will Fitzgerald, who's got a little bit more design background, one of the first questions that he asks the designers when he's starting to advise them on what to do is, what kind of designer are you? Okay, so that might seem like a real basic question to a lot of people, but for me, it's like, well, a designer, okay. I think somebody on the outside thinks of a designer as, I got a great idea for a game, okay? And I was quickly told that that's not the case. So I want to get your perspective on it, and we're going to go down the line here. We'll start with Jameson, and we'll break down some of the individual design responsibilities, but in a nutshell, Jameson, what is a designer?
What is a designer? Well, for me, early when I came out of school and got into design, it was really kind of hard to classify that in general. Most designers weren't very technical, and that was kind of where I had a leg up coming out with a programming degree, and that was how I actually got my first job, was being able to like demonstrate the kind of things I was able to create. So having a technical background, I use that a lot to script, build levels, that kind of stuff, and so I was able to kind of do a little bit of everything when it came to implementation and design. As far as like what a designer does, generally they own a particular piece of the game or contribute to a part of the game where of course you have ideas, but it's all about collaboration with the rest of the people that are working on that part of the game with you and trying to figure out kind of the best solutions, focusing on fun, helping to get the stuff in there, and working as a team to accomplish something.
Excellent. Ryan, same. Let me hear your perspective.
In a similar vein, I've seen designers be everything. I mean, we have designers who are just level layout guys. We have designers who work more intensely with art, I guess. And then we have technical designers. So we have guys who are almost programmers, basically. It all depends on how your company's set up, really. At Bungie, we have all breeds. So across the spectrum, really.
Same question, Misty.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Ryan was saying. It looks a little different at different companies. Based on everything, factors like the technology they're using, whether it's proprietary or licensed, will change sometimes what a designer needs to do or what they need to be proficient at. But yeah, it's not so much about your ideas, it's about being able to champion other people's ideas. Yeah. And that means using, your technical skills, whether it be programming or just like general logic solving, to be, good at scripting, good at kind of a little bit of everything. A jack of all trades kind of, you don't have to be an expert in everything, but having that as like a foundation to kind of inform how you do what you do as a designer is really valuable.
Okay. So I'm going to stay with you for a second, Rusty, because we were talking earlier that, and you had made the comment that you came to Full Sail with every intent of being a programmer. Mm-hmm. And that's what you were trained as, when you went through the game development program. But you're a designer.
That is true.
Go figure. So, yeah, I mean, how did you make the transition?
Well, I was really fortunate because I went into Full Sail just knowing that I wanted to make games, and I didn't really know what that would look like. And then based on the curriculum, I'm like, oh, that means I'm going to be a programmer. Okay, cool. I hope I'm not bad at programming. And got through that and was like, okay, I can do this. And it was really during my final project when you had coordinated for people from Midway to come out, Harvey Smith and Ricardo Bear, who were both on the design side, and they gave like a presentation, and I went to that and was really inspired by some of what they were saying. And then they came and talked to the students who were in final project, and were just asking all these questions about like, what we were working on, just kind of getting to know us. And Harvey in particular followed up with me, and at first I didn't know how to react to that because I was like, well, I'm supposed to be a programmer, and maybe he's like trying to trick me or something and wants me to like, answer his questions in a very technical way. So I didn't really quite know how to approach it, and so I think I totally screwed that up basically. But then later was like thinking about it more and was like, well, I would like to be a designer, because I started to break down what I did at Full Sail, what I naturally gravitated towards in terms of like group projects, and it was always more player-facing aspects of the thing. Not that I didn't enjoy some of the more engine side stuff, but that was where I found myself gravitating. So I was like, maybe design would not be that much of a stretch for me. So I contacted him, and that ended up working out. So I started as a scripter, and then very quickly after starting there, realized that there was this sort of need and opportunity for technical design, which is still not really well recognized across the industry, which was the ability to have somebody who's working on the design side to be an advocate for design, be a liaison to the programming people, to the staff, to make sure that the tools and the workflows are conducive to iteration, all the things that are super valuable to designers that are not necessarily the first thing you think of. You think of like, well, I have to make a compelling experience. I have to contribute good ideas to and add to these other ideas that I'm working with and that I'm working towards. And it's easy to forget about all the necessities that you have in development to actually empower that. And so that's where I kind of gravitated towards, and I've been doing that ever since.
Nice. And how much of your time now is actually spent programming?
Not very much for me right now, just because we now have at Volition, we have a team. I'm one of 6 technical designers, and so we've kind of specialized a little bit internally within our group to be the most impactful we can. So we have some people focused more on architecture, which is what I'm doing, and then a couple guys who are focused on more tools type stuff. So okay. I'm not actually programming much in the past couple of years, but that's by choice and by, as best I can, acknowledgement of where can I have the biggest impact.
Great. Ryan, not a bad resume, man.
Thank you.
Coming out in 2006, and you immediately went out to Rockstar. And I think it was around that time when you guys first went out that we first started hearing this term technical designer. I know Harvey, for those that don't know, Harvey Smith is not currently the creative director at Arcane Studios in Lyon, France. But he he had spent a lot of time recruiting from Full Sail here back when he was at Midway, and you should look him up. He's got a pretty storied resume himself. But that was when we first started hearing about technical design, and you've been involved in this now for almost 10 years now. Tell us what your day looks like.
My day now is changing rapidly, actually. So I came on as a world systems designer at Bungie, and it's not a role Bungie has historically had. They've very much developed from these linear Halo experiences where they're creating very cinematic, tight experiences to something where they're trying to go a bit more open world, and that requires a different tool set, a different way of thinking, and a different way of making and providing content for the player. So my day on that was historically building backbone content delivery systems for the player. Very much player-facing stuff, but still like one step back. So I'd help enable other designers to provide more content to the player. Now I've transitioned to more of a lead role for that team, so I spend most of my day meeting and just making sure that there's no hurdles in the way of that team, and we are slowly staffing up. Both in the systems design role and in a more technical design role. So design does have those advocates in the Bungie world.
Nice. So you're kind of like a fireman then. You sit in meetings all day and they tell you where the fire's at, and
Pretty much.
Get the team together to douse the fire.
You do have to be very flexible in any design role, really. I mean, you're constantly running around trying to fill the need that exists. It's not necessarily about like, oh, I want to push my ideas. It's I have to push all these ideas.
Yeah.
How can we best do that?
Yeah, and find out overall what's going to create the better experience.
Exactly.
And your idea might not be it.
No, usually it's not.
Yeah. So, and Jameson, as you know, the principal designer, I mean, basically you're the design director. You oversee the design of the game. Tell me, you're dealing with a lot of different design disciplines than with the people that are under you and whatnot.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the fireman thing, because I
That's
say
more
every
your
day
job,
I feel like that I am
Yeah.
a firefighter. That's when I come in each day, I have no idea what I'm going to be doing because
Wow.
the fires haven't started yet.
Yeah.
We've kind of organized around groups of content that focus on a particular area of the game. That are multidiscipline groups, and so each of those groups are working on, say, combat or world building, and as they're working individually toward the vision of the game, part of what I try to do in my position right now is to make sure that each group is working toward the same box, and we're trying to narrow that box in. And so a big part of my day is figuring out where are these things not coming in line, where can we get assistance in something that's maybe falling behind, how do we make decisions to be more efficient, and helping to make sure that the vision itself is always being adhered to. And so that's where also the beauty in that process of having a technical design group, which is something that's very new for me, is a huge benefit, because we don't have to worry as much about the how are we going to do it. We have a group that helps us find the best way to do that. And so
Nice.
for me, I can work with the groups about what's the vision here, what are we trying to accomplish, and then we can rely on that group to help us figure out how.
Excellent. So what you're saying is basically you just pawn everything off on Rusty.
Absolutely.
Okay, got it. Nice. I like your style, mister. How many designers do you have at Volition?
About 30
Yeah? Okay.
out of 190 or so people.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting to me because, again, and especially here at Full Sail, we're working, like our final projects, we're working on such a small scale compared to the scales that you guys work on. It's anywhere from 6 to 8 guys on a team and a 5-month development cycle, whereas you're looking at, a team of 30 designers, 190 people all together, all coming forward or all moving towards the same destination and everything.
Semi-controlled chaos.
Yeah, semi-controlled chaos. So tell me, how do you deal with it? I mean, what's a typical day like?
It really comes down to just making sure that, we're trying to take an approach where the groups are putting the core in first of what they're trying to accomplish so that they get the baseline in so we can test it, make sure it's fun, and then build from there. Like we have the end vision that we're trying to get to, but it's all about kind of measuring the process along the way, integrating all the pieces in together and making sure that they come in and fit, because that's a big, like a lot of times it doesn't, so we have to go in and figure out where we make adjustments so that things kind of come together and mesh a little better. But then measuring that goal against where we want to get to and seeing, okay, is our trajectory good to get there? And then if not, where do we make adjustments? Do we need some tools to help make things move faster? Do we need more people somewhere? Where do we make those adjustments?
Yeah. So are you then responsible for moving those pieces around and assigning the daily tasks then to the designers and whatnot? Or
I do help oversee what's responsible, what resources we have for that stuff, but we rely on the groups themselves to kind of manage how they're going to accomplish it. And then we work with them to make sure that the list that they're coming up with makes sense and that they'll be able to use it to get to those goals.
Yeah. Ryan, you've spent time now at both Rockstar San Diego and Bungie. I'd be interested to know a little bit about the differences, not necessarily in culture for this question, but in your responsibilities. Are they real similar as far as you kind of did the same thing at both studios, yeah?
Pretty similar. Rockstar was a much more technical experience for me. I came in and I was a scripter there, I was a designer there, but their scripting language is extremely technical to the point where you are actually scripting network interactions, things like that. At Bungie, it's not quite the same. We don't have that level of control. So it's a lot more interfacing with engineers, interfacing with support teams, trying to pull forward your vision for this is the gameplay experience we're trying to create. In order to do that, the systems team needs to accommodate it like this, but we need engineering because of that. And so like I said, my day now is a lot of running around and a little bit of making sure that all that development work gets in the game.
Wow, yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely a different experience. And like I said, Bungie is slowly ramping into this more broad design sense, where a technical designer is actually a role they really want there. So.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk, and not just in the game industry, but in technology in general right now, that design is really taking over. The experience, usability. We have a panel tomorrow on usability and whatnot. I'm guessing that you guys interface a lot with the people in QA or UX or user experience and whatnot. Is that the case at Bungie?
It absolutely is. Our QA team is over 120 people alone. Our UR team is probably about 10 people, and we can live stream that at all times to our desktops. So we can always kind of see what's going on there, but there's just constant interfacing with those teams to make sure that we're actually meeting the goals that we're setting for ourselves. Because we could have awesome gameplay ideas, and they look great to us, but if they don't translate well to the player, well, it's kind of all for naught.
Yeah, no, exactly. Kind of the same question to you, Rusty. Are you working, with your UX team, or what sort of interaction do you have?
Our UX team is right now fairly small, relatively speaking, to something like what Bungie has, and is right now more focused on player experience stuff. So I don't directly interface with them.
Okay.
A lot. My area of concern as a technical designer is more kind of the developer experience, but it goes hand in hand with that, because what we're really doing, and like when you say like the industry as a whole is becoming more design driven, I think one way that you can sort of break that down is to be more data driven, because to be more design driven doesn't mean the ideas are better. It means that you have more iteration on the ideas that you're putting forward into the game. And so
say that again. That was good. Can you say that again? I like that.
Sure. I think it's not that ideas are getting any better or anything like that. I think there's very few great ideas. There's a ton of good ideas, and that's where getting a team of people together and everybody contributing, you're going to have a lot of good ideas, and those good ideas can mesh and build on each other. But even a good or quote-unquote great idea on paper still needs work and iteration once it gets into a game. And as games get more and more complex, in terms of scale, in terms of actual complexity on the technical side, there's an ever-increasing need to have more time to iterate. And one of the things that can be a big challenge to that is if your iteration times are slow, your designers spend a lot of their time and effort just in waiting to see whether the iteration that they made it better, worse, if better, how much better, And so what we want to do is try to continue to focus on that. So and I think this is an industry as a whole. I mean, everything from, I don't have first hand knowledge, but I mean, what I glean from UE4 with where they've taken it from UE3 is they're pushing in the same direction, where it's like understanding the value of having it be more data-driven, so that people can prototype faster, but even when you're talking final implementation, you can iterate that thing faster. So that's where my concern is kind of. So it's not so much on the UX side, but on the developer, the DX side.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, that's an overloaded term. Forget I said that.
No, that's a whole panel, man.
Yeah. But that's where there's a lot of potential, and we have to find that potential.
To me, that's fascinating, because I'm thinking back to last time when Josh Hamrick, whom you work with at Bungie, was out here, another one of our graduates, spent some time in the game studio working with kids on their final project, and this team that he was working with was like maybe in the last week, so they were about to do their final turn-in, and they were making minor tweaks to the controller. They had an Xbox controller hooked up to the game, and Josh was giving them feedback, and I would watch, the guy's name was Ted, he would like run back to his desk and, make a quick change, load it on the drive and bring it back in, so I actually understood what you said. Yeah, it's like you can't have a lot of downtime there while you're waiting to find out if the changes that you made, worked and what have you. So Jameson, tell me, are you doing? Has your job now become like no technical and all personnel primarily, or are you still involved in any of the tech side of the development process?
I still use our tools, and I actually have to make an effort to make that a part of my at least monthly goals.
Well, I can imagine you could just totally get bogged down in personnel and things like that.
I'm rarely at my desk, to be honest, because I'm usually out trying to help solve a problem right now. But I try to take ownership of some part of the game where I can help at least, get some early prototyping in, or help kind of get something implemented, so we can see what it's like. I don't feel like I can take too much on in that vein, because I don't want to hold anyone back if I get distracted with something else. But try to at least make sure that I'm in there and staying current on what we're using, and trying to help anyway.
Yeah. I know that's frustrating for a lot of people that do get into design, and I think, well, you guys have both said it now, that you spend a lot of your time in meetings, and again, what I'm hearing a theme here, that teamwork and communication are extremely important to be a game designer.
Oh, absolutely.
So go ahead.
I would say absolutely. I mean, communication is the most important part of a designer's job, I would say.
More important than having a good idea for a game?
Everybody's got ideas.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like ideas, even if the idea itself is very good and even is implemented well, if it doesn't fit the vision of the game, or even the particular player type that you're trying to, entice and build for, then it's not worth it anyway.
Yeah. What problems do you guys face? I guess I'll direct this to Rusty. What problems do you guys face? All your games are multi-platformed, and you've got to make sure it works on the Xbox. You got to make sure it works on a PS4, whatever. Do you have much involvement? Tell me about that process a little bit. I'd be interested to know.
I have recently. I didn't as much in previous years, but we've been doing a lot of rework on our both our tool set. Our tool set's been more of an evolution or an iteration on it, and then the engine side, it's been mostly a complete rebuild for next gen. And so there's been a lot of considerations. This time around, it was actually kind of made easy for us that the architecture across all the platforms is the most similar it's ever been, and in terms of Sony, Microsoft, and PC. So there's only a few things that we really have to take into account. And those get into more specific things like rendering, stuff that isn't as relevant or impactful to like a designer's daily workflow. So from our tools standpoint, we share the same pipeline for everything, which is a benefit. It hasn't always been that way, but it's a consideration, but it doesn't usually become very disruptive. It's just something we have to make sure we ask that question whenever we're thinking about a lower level change, especially on the tool side. Like, are there any considerations here that would need to
How does
be
it
taken?
affect the big picture?
Right. But largely it's just basically that. It's a consideration. It's being familiar with. I spent a lot of time about 2 years ago as information started to roll out to developers and stuff about what was coming. Basically with the consoles, was spending time breaking that down and figuring out not so much the platform specifics, but just in general how it was going to change the constraints for designers, because it's actually been a pretty big change. The very simple things are like memory and stuff like that. Obviously, it wasn't a doubling of memory. It was an order of magnitude bigger than that, but that brings different things with it. It's not like you can just say, oh, now we can load everything we wanted to load, because now we're actually more bottlenecked by the speed of the memory because we can't access all that in a single frame. So we have to think about how do we use memory now in a different way, and it changes a lot of the constraints. So we've spent some time thinking about that, but in terms of the lower level tools stuff, it's pretty much a kind of a consistent pipeline for everything.
One thing I meant to ask Ryan when we got started, systems design. Okay, tell me the difference between a system designer and a technical designer, or is it the same thing, just different wording?
No, there is a difference there. A technical designer would focus much more on aiding the design team with the back end, with tools, being an advocate for the design team itself. When you're talking about something like systems design, you're looking at developing either through scripting or working with engineers to develop things like content delivery systems. We had in GTA and Red Dead, I was responsible for all the world streaming systems. So there's an awful lot of forward-facing stuff there that you are directly responsible for, but it doesn't deal as much with the back end that a technical designer would.
Got ya. Okay, interesting. Yeah, please.
I think this gets into an area which is worth bringing up the point of it. A lot of it depends on, there's a company culture, but there's also the technology you're using. So if you're working at a studio that's using something licensed like Unreal, it changes a little bit of that dynamic potentially in terms of what a systems designer would do or what a technical designer would do. For instance, working with Unreal in the past, the technical design role was more about being kind of an expert of how all of the various aspects of the tool set kind of came together in the engine. So somebody could say, I need to do this. What's the best way to do this? Because there's 10 ways I can do this. What's going to be the best for iteration, for performance, all of those things. And so sometimes it can be about knowing how to use everything, and that's where like a full sail education comes in very handy, especially if it's the full game dev program where you have the programming background, is you understand how some of the things work under the hood. Even if you don't have or need access to the code, you just sort of inherently kind of understand how this stuff goes together. Yeah. And that can help inform your decision making or your approach. And that's really powerful. And then in some cases, if you're proprietary technology, well then obviously that goes even further because you're defining some of these systems and actually writing these systems that are essentially what in another tool set might be a predefined tool or module. You're building it from the ground up. So
exactly.
What he said?
Yep.
Yes. So I want to switch gears a little bit now, okay? And we're going to start with Jameson. I want to be a technical designer. I don't know if I told you that, but I do. What do I need to do?
Long way to go.
Yeah. I'm leaving. No. So it's my first day at Full Sail. I'm going to the game dev program, and I want to be a technical designer, just like Rusty when I grow up. What do I need to do?
Honestly, I feel like that the knowledge that you come out of this degree with gives you most of the foundation for what you want to do. Ultimately, the tech design focus, though, is about thinking about how to make games better and what you need to make a game effectively. So in your studies, if you want to focus a little bit more on tool side development or making things that you can use to make the game better, that would definitely help you. And thinking about as Rusty said before, like the developer experience and how when we come together we can make this thing easier, better, more efficient. I think that focus is kind of it would be a benefit if you want to move down that line.
Same question, Ryan.
I would say that the education here is great for that, but I would pay particular attention to learning to speak not only with the engineer side of things, but with designers. As a technical designer, you're very much bridging that gap. Systems designer, same thing, where this guy wants an awesome experience, this guy wants an awesome back end. How do we marry those two things? And that's really important to this role.
Yeah.
Do you guys have much interaction? I know, I guess I'll ask Rusty and Ryan, do you guys interact with the art team often, or is that?
Not as much, to be honest. I'm trying to help my team interact with them more because
Yeah.
they're trying to craft these experiences. But personally, no, not really.
How important is it to understand what the artists deal with on a daily basis to help you accomplish your job?
Well, you still need to be able to understand their language and the way they work, especially with their tools pipeline, their concerns, things like vert count, memory. What can we have loaded in the space? What do you need to craft this experience? There's all kinds of limitations that designers are forced to deal with, as are artists. So you have to be able to communicate that across team.
Yeah. Rusty, do you guys look to hire entry-level designers in any capacity, or is a design position usually something a little bit more of a veteran type thing?
No, we definitely are looking for that at times. We try to make sure we get a healthy mix. Like, you know, we want to have some people who are coming in with more entry-level experience, because they potentially bring something different to the table in terms of perspective and a skill set that is not necessarily common even among people who've been in the industry for a long time. But at the same time, you want to make sure you have that more tenured perspective as well, and has been through shipping titles, knows the challenges that are inevitable and how you can best react to those and stuff. So we want to have a mix and be able to, you know, it's sort of like a general responsibility. Like I like to think of it this way, at least, is that if we're going to hire somebody at a junior level, we need to make sure we have people with experience there that can mentor them and help, you know, guide them through some of the early challenges and potential pitfalls. So that's kind of part of the reason for making sure we have a mix. I don't know if you were specifically talking tech design or design in general, but I think the answer is pretty much the same to both.
Yeah,
to be honest.
and it was kind of more of a general thing, and I'll continue on in kind of more of a general sense. Now that I've completed my degree program here at Full Sail, I am now a full-fledged game dev. Thank you very much.
You still have a long way to go.
I'm ready to tessellate something. Well, now I'm completely confused.
Sorry.
Okay, so I just graduated, right? And I'm looking online, and I'm seeing that you guys are looking for some junior technical designers and everything. How do I get your attention? Not only how do I get your attention, once I have your attention, what are you looking for? What's going to impress you?
For me, a really good way to get attention is through like social media channels, because it's a way to make very casual contact with somebody that you can kind of use as a conversation starter. So I think that's valuable. And then what I'm looking for specifically is a lot of time, like first indications to me are how, don't think that's the wrong way, but how analytical somebody is in terms of do they try to break down problems? Because I want somebody to understand, like, this kind of goes, I think, hand in hand with people who are like, I have lots of ideas. Like, I don't really care if you have ideas. I want to know if you can take other people's ideas and break them down and either explain to me why they potentially went that route, or what you think could have been altered or improved about that. But there's a lot of value in being able to take, you know, a game and break it down, like do your own review on it. And whether you know specifically or you're just making assumptions, say like, I think this is the reason they went with these decisions. This was the player experience that they were going for. These were probably some of the challenges and where they had to make concessions. You know, you don't even have to know for sure, but just going through that mental exercise shows that you're kind of product focused and you understand the full like kind of like circle of development that goes into making a game. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yesterday with the Bohemia panel of programmers that we had here, Liam Hislop, who's the project manager for Bohemia, had one thing that he said when asked a similar question, and his response to the candidate would be, show me that you can solve my problems. And you basically said the same thing. Problem solving is like extremely important. I'd like to get your guys' view on it as well. Ryan, what are you looking for in the new guy that's coming in?
So I know we've said multiple times everyone has great ideas, or everyone has ideas at the very least.
Not all of them are great. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I like I like new hires fresh out of college just because they have that passion behind those new ideas. A lot of the times you get vets that don't, or that know how to break it down so much that it takes the magic out of it. But what I look for in someone who's applying is not only do they have a great idea, but let's talk about breaking your idea down into what it takes to make that, to put that experience in front of the player.
Yeah.
Like
Execution.
Exactly. You wanna make, let's say, open world PvP in Destiny. That's phenomenal. What are the core parts of that we're gonna have to make, that we need to take in front of engineering, that we need to take in front of the tech design org, we need to take in front of artists even? And then what can we do on our side to make this a reality? Like what does design need to do, or what tools do we need in order to do what we need to do?
Excellent. How can all of our students that are sitting out there and online right now, while they're going to school, prepare for something like that so that when they do graduate, they're ready to hit the ground running?
Have those awesome ideas and then break them apart. That's all I can say is, like, create the paragraph pitch for your awesome idea that you want to do, and then break it down into its core components. Like, okay, well, we need a PvP system for this. We need to communicate like this. These are all the pitfalls I see. These are just, break down what you think is great into its core components, and that will show that you were able to analyze it and not just say like, hey, this is awesome.
Yeah. That's really, that sounds to me like a really great portfolio piece too.
Well,
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I was going to touch on. One of the things that I really recommend to students as they're going through is to start a blog, and as you start a project for class or for a side project, to just start an initial post saying, here's what I'm trying to accomplish, or here's what my tasks are, and daily, just put in there, here's my progress, here's the things that I stumbled on, here's the things I'm trying to figure out, here's what I accomplished, and that allows me to kind of see someone's thought process and how they tackle problems, and where they got assistance from, and who kind of who they were able to communicate with, and that gives a lot of good insight into the problem solving, which is, I think we all agree, the key to that kind of work.
I think one of the supporting reasons for that, and you don't necessarily make the connection immediately, but like Jameson was saying, one of the really important things for us is to figure out what is the core, and define that and iterate that until we have a good core, and then build from there. And it sort of implies you need to know what the core is, and you need to be able to break down something that already exists to determine what is their core, because it shows that you can look at it from both perspectives.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, kind of what it all comes down to.
Yeah. I like the idea of a blog, and I like, you need to be able to kind of show your tracks. Since we're in such a great intimate setting here, and I'm not asking you guys to show your hands, but everybody here is going to be getting ready to start doing interviews, and some of them are going to be maybe interviewing with you guys and whatnot. Give us a little insight into that process.
Into the interview process?
Yeah. What to expect? What are they going to do, especially in a design interview?
It really depends on the individual interviewers and the kind of things that they're looking for. But the way we approach ours, once someone's kind of made it through we've looked at your resume, we like what you have to say, we send you the design test, we look that over. If we like that, we give you a phone call, and then maybe another phone call before we bring someone on site. But once they're there, we tend to do a series of two multidiscipline. We actually bring producers in and other disciplines and programmers to interview the people to get perspectives across the board. But they come in pairs, and some people focus on very technical stuff. Some people focus on the ability and experience using tools, to be able to talk about that. And some people focus on, to me, the most important part is how are you going to fit into the culture? What's your personality like, and how do you, work through adversity and figure out solving problems together?
You guys are making huge games. I mean, it's in we're talking Blockbuster games here and everything, and you're doing it on large teams. And I'm glad that you brought up culture, because culture is something that's really important. Ryan, what's a culture like at Bungie? How would you describe it?
Playful.
Yeah?
It's a very fun atmosphere. I mean, everyone comes in, does their job, takes their job very seriously, but at the end of the day, we are all just grown kids, so you have to be able to come in with a smile on your face and bounce off all this adversity and still come out with a smile on your face.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. You're serious. You guys, it's a business. You guys are taking care of business, but there's no need not to have fun doing that.
Exactly.
Is it a similar culture, Rusty, at Volition?
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that's interesting about cultures is there's like that aspect of it, which is kind of the general attitude of people, and then there's also, in our case, we have a culture that I think it sort of organically arrived there, but then once it was identified, it's something that we're really trying to foster, which is kind of what we were talking about with ideas. Everybody has great ideas.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that it's a level playing field, that everybody has input, everybody feels comfortable having input, and that we can take any of those ideas and take them further, and it not just be like coming from design. So our whole kind of company culture is built around being a little bit flatter, to where we can basically focus around, Jameson said it earlier, kind of like an area of the game, and we build a multidiscipline group around that, and that's kind of the group that's driving that. It's not design drives this, and then it goes into implementation, which then brings the other disciplines in. We want their perspective early so that, one, the constraints that they know and operate under, they can help inform the original idea, but also because they just have genuinely good ideas too.
So it sounds like people at Volition aren't going to be afraid to give their ideas. However, giving an idea, it's interesting, and I see it all day long with the way that people communicate and whatnot. What is the best way for somebody to present and be heard, but to do so in a diplomatic fashion that doesn't offend and whatnot? I mean, communication, we're talking about communication. That's the best way. How do you guys do it to keep from wanting to kill each other all the time? Or do you kill each other?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
We're focusing really hard right now on giving and receiving feedback, and being open to hearing, honest feedback about something's not hitting the quality bar, or something could have been done a different way, and we encourage anyone to give anyone else that kind of feedback. And it's rough, right? Like sometimes it hurts to hear that kind of stuff, especially from someone you respect or someone that you
So
want
I'm
to
guessing you
impress.
got to have thick skin.
You do, and that's what we're trying to do. But we're trying to do it in a very we all want to make the game better, right? It's not you suck at this, dude. It's more of like, hey, I want to help you get better at this, right? Like where I see an area of improvement, but also positive feedback. Like we're really encouraging people to make sure that we're telling each other when something that they're doing is great. And we've developed a whole system, a feedback system at work, where we can go in and just put a little note about somebody. Hey, they did a really good job in this meeting, championing this idea or coming to a solution to something. And, this is something that we're still working on, and we haven't been doing very long in this method, but I think it's great. Like no one's ever surprised now by feedback that they get, because they're getting it along the way. They're hearing as it's happening.
That's brilliant. Yeah, instead of waiting until, your review's not until December.
Right.
So, yeah. Did you want to add something?
Well, I was going to add something. I think that part is absolutely critical and huge for the culture we're trying to foster. But the other part, too, I think that can really help that is to make sure that we're using kind of a shared vision as a studio. So we have the vision for the game, but we also have a vision for the culture. And part of that is, so for instance, specifically in the context of people giving their ideas, we want to focus everything through like a filter or a lens of the player experience. So when you're presenting an idea, we encourage people to let the presentation stand on what is the player experience, and why do you think this is good? How does it enhance the vision of the game, or go along with the vision of the game, and take it out of the I like this. As a gamer, I want this, or as a developer, I want this. Like if you're always talking about what you want or my great idea, it's not that it necessarily won't go along with the vision, but you're already thinking about it wrong.
Yeah.
And so, not only are you thinking about it potentially wrong, but by presenting that idea and contributing that idea in that way, it also puts it in a context that's easier for people to have a conversation about. Because if they disagree, they're not disagreeing per se with your idea, they're disagreeing about what the experience that you think is going to lead to. They might say, well, I don't think it's going to do that. This is the experience this could lead to. And then the conversation is not about, two people against each other. It's about whether or not they actually agree on the outcome.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful.
Wow, great stuff. Yeah. I'm going to ask one last question before we open it up for questions from the audience. If you have a question, just raise your hand, and they will bring some mics around. If you're online and you have a question, you can tweet using the hashtag #FullSaleOnAir, and we're going to answer a few of those questions as well. We've kind of covered this last question a little bit, but I'm going to ask it again and a little bit more direct. What advice do you have for the students that are here on making a successful transition from a Full Sail student to Full Sail graduate to productive member of the game industry?
Just in general, well, one of the things that I really appreciate, and one of the things that's really helped a few people get jobs or referrals from me during my time here is I'm here a couple of times a year at least, and the people that make an effort to contact me, say hello, let me see their face, and talk with me, that goes a long way. It's really easy to remember those kind of people, and they make an impact. That's a really good way to do it. That's why we're here. Like we're here, pick our brains, come talk to us. And sometimes the questions you ask make us think about things a little differently, or analyze kind of, how do I answer this question? I haven't thought about that. So that kind of stuff can go a long way.
And speaking of that, for those of you that are here on campus, we are going to be doing a little meet and greet at 1 o'clock today in the patio on 3F. So feel free to come out, and everybody gang up on Jameson. So same question to you, Ryan.
I would say go out there with confidence, but don't be cocky. You all have a valued skill set. Every one of you here, whether it be in design, production, engineering, everyone here has a valued skill set. And when a company starts talking to you, it's because they want to talk to you. Not because, oh, well, he's here, we might as well talk to him. That's not how it works out. We don't have enough time to talk to everyone who comes to our desks. So, and what Jameson said about networking, talk to us today. Like, we will remember you. That's just what it is.
Rusty, we got 15 minutes left. Go.
Well, I'll complicate the question a little bit just to tailor it to the tech design aspect, because I think it's valuable to understand, I guess, the differences potentially in what you're looking to present. So one of the interesting things about tech design, I think it's worth stating, is that generally right now a lot of studios will have the role of like a tools programmer, which ultimately is responsible for pipelines and stuff like that. Tech design shares the same goals, but is under the design umbrella. And so if you have a specific interest in tech design, I think that's a valuable thing to understand going into it. Because like Jameson said, we're going to put you through our traditional design interview and maybe tailor it a little more to the technical side. But we still want you to have good design sense and the perspective of, because we kind of operate in the strong belief that a good technical designer has to truly understand the developer experience of the designers, go through the motions, know the tools, know the pipelines. Because if you're just coming in and trying to like spot fix problems that you have no practical or relative understanding of, it's not that it won't make it better, but it might not be the best that it can be in terms of the outcome. So what that means is that, especially with a full sail education, you have the hands-on experience. You have in terms of working like in a group environment, you have some technical experience. Those are things that you can have the confidence in, but understand that you still need to approach it as, how do I become a functional member of a design team, essentially? Because just like you need to be able to relate to other disciplines, first and foremost, you have to be able to relate to the design discipline you're going to be supporting and working with in a very meaningful way. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I think it's important. There is a subtle difference for sure in the interview process. There's a big difference in what you'll be doing day to day, but for the interview process, it's only a subtle difference. So understanding what a design interview looks like, or what it might look like, I think is good for preparing yourself. But I totally agree, that confidence, a company is investing time and money in talking to you. That's not an inexpensive thing to do, especially if you're talking about in person. So if you're at that point, have some confidence in knowing that they really want to hear what you have to say and see whether this is a good fit. Don't just try to say what you think they want to hear. Answer honestly, because it has to be a good match for both people if it's going to be a truly productive outcome in terms of you getting the job. So I kind of wandered off your initial question, but I think it's
No, that was good, and I see Jameson biting his tongue down there. So go.
It just made me think the balance between confidence and cocky, it can be a fine line. And if you are too cocky, the red flags get raised for how you fit in, to the culture.
Yeah.
So there's a lot about, making sure the confidence is coming across as confidence, and that you just believe in yourself and in your skill set,
I like that, and you know how I always deal with that question is by saying that you need confidence and humility in equal parts. And confidence to me doesn't mean that you know everything, but it means that you're capable of finding the answer. Yep. And you're able to do that because you're humble enough to know that no matter how long you stay in this industry, you're going to be a student for the rest of your life. Right. And if you give that up, if you think you know it all, that's when you become cocky. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in interview situations where a question was asked and it was something I used to know, but I hadn't done it in a long time, and I had to tell them, I've done this before. I honestly can't answer that very well, but if you give me a computer and Google, in 10 minutes I could have an answer for you. So that tells them you understand how to break down a problem, you understand how to get an answer. If you can't answer it perfectly, that was a scary thing for me to say because I'd never done that in an interview, but it was well received. They're like, that makes sense. If you haven't done it in years, you probably don't remember all the little details, but if you've done it before, you can quickly pick it back up.
That's a brilliant answer, I think.
And I think it's just but you just have to really understand the context of, like you said, that can also go to cockiness. Like, oh, give me the internet and I can solve any problem. Just hire me.
I'll
Google it. I'll Google it and it'll be fine. You don't want that to be the thing, but back it up or support it with, I've literally done the problem you just asked me. I did this in school. That was what my answer was. 'Cause I did it in one of my classes, but I was like, I haven't done it since school, so I know how to break it down, but I couldn't tell you, and that's okay. But this all kind of relates back to things I think that we've talked about earlier in the conversation. Confidence is knowing, or I think if the foundation is in that you know how to break the problem down, you understand the problem, and it's not just your opinion. Confidence in your opinion is dangerous because that's when it kind of bleeds into the cocky area, or at least in terms of how people could perceive it. But if your confidence in your answer is kind of derived out of you understand at least a lot of the components that are going into whatever the problem is they're asking you to solve or the question, then you can answer it and you can make references to other things. Like, I'm saying this because I noticed this in this other game that did this, and I think that's why they did it, and I think that's why this has value. Just that's where you can kind of pull confidence
bring it
into
up,
it, is show that you know the kind of the full realm of the answer, not just your opinion.
One other thing I want to mention is I think it's important as an entry-level person coming in is to know that we don't expect you to already know how to do the job. What we are evaluating is your potential. And what we want to see is your problem solving and, looking at what kind of person you are and making sure that you can come in and contribute. And we will teach you the things you need to know, right, to work at our studio. It's all about how confident are we that you've portrayed yourself as someone that can fit in.
And to piggyback on both those real quick before you move on, when you're sitting there on the phone with your phone interview or in the room with these people and they're asking you to solve a problem, we see this a lot. Don't clam up. Talk through the problem with them. Even if you have no idea what you're doing, just talk through your thought process. They'll help you. It's a very natural experience, but you have to give them the feedback.
Yep.
You have to be communicative, or it's going to be a sunk ship.
Yeah. Well, it's a collaborative process, the development process in general, so that totally makes sense.
Yep.
Do we have questions out there? Is anybody? Let's see some hands. Okay, I'm going to take one online. Just kidding, we'll get right back to you. But I do have a really good question here first from, let's see, this comes from Justice Getty. And, we get this question a lot, so I'm glad that he answered it. We have a creative writing degree here on campus now, and there are a lot of people that are coming into this degree because they want to write games, So the question from Justice is, how closely does the design team work with the writers? What is the level of collaboration between the two?
For us, they're heavily integrated. They tend to be parts of those groups that focus in on particular areas of the game. Sometimes we have a team of about 4 writers, and sometimes they'll be a part of more than one group. but they always have representation there because it's just important for them to understand where the game is going as it is for us to understand where the narrative is going. And so they, they'll often, they're another part of that puzzle, just like anyone else is, with a different perspective and expertise for us.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump ahead to the next question that every creative writing student here or online is about to ask next. How do they get noticed? How do they get a job? Are you even able to answer that? Do you?
Writers do tend to fall under the design umbrella a bit. More than any other area, of course. But we do, like whenever a resume comes in and we look at it, one, we try to look and see, is this person a designer or are they purely a writer? And then if it is really writing, we'll hand that off to the writing team and let them evaluate and look at how they would fit in there.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, this time I'm for real. Questions? Nick?
Stand up? Okay. Sorry. A large portion of design is once a project's been going on for a while, you guys are trying to get everything moving. But another really, really important part of it is when you're wrapping up one project and starting another, you have to figure out what parts of the engine need to get developed, what new features are we going to put in. And I just wanted to know how your company sort of handle that, how things get planned out, and sort of like the timing between when a new game or a new expansion is being presented to when actual developers start working on it, what you all are doing.
You want to start?
I ain't answering that.
Sure.
They're playing games, doing a little research, as I hear you guys calling it.
So in my experience, your ramp down phase is also usually your ramp up phase. There's never a lull in game development where, hey, we finished this project, let's all take 2 months off. So it's very important to constantly be thinking about like, well, this is really working well for us and this is the direction we see ourselves going, and form that 6-year plan while you're currently working on your project. That way when you get to the end of it, you already have things in the pipeline. People are already starting to work on the next big thing. It's especially important for designers because we do tend to be... Tech generally comes onto a project first, and design will come on at some point after. So it's important that they have their, at least baseline decisions made so that they're jumping into something.
Interesting. Ours is... most of that is very identical to what we do, but we tend to have designers first on a project because what we want to figure out is where do we want to take the game? And usually like even a year, sometimes 2 years before the current one's finished, we're already thinking about like where are we going next? What kind of things are, and of course you're going to make a lot of adjustments along the way because as we have our ideas about the current game, if they don't pan out, we make adjustments as we go, and that's going to inform the decisions we make for the next one. But early on, we're trying to get people to figure out like what are the right choices to make for the next one so we can start thinking about what kind of tech do we need to make that stuff happen. So we kind of, I think it's just a little different, but the win and the importance and all that stuff is definitely happening around the same time.
Who else? We got one back there I can't see because the lights. So tall guy with the beard in the back.
Hi guys, Spencer Hawkins, Game Development. I know that publishers also input design ideas into games, and while you guys are trying to maximize player experience, they generally try to maximize profitability. How do you work with publishers on design ideas? And I guess, is the thing I just said even true? Thanks.
I think the important thing to realize is that maximizing, everybody focusing on making a better experience increases profitability. Right, like if you make a game that people want to play, that's where you make money. So absolutely, everyone has their own perspective and their own agenda at times about certain things that want to go into the game. But ultimately, it's about keeping the perspective that what everyone is trying to do is make the experience that they think is best and is going to provide the better experience and profitability. So it's often about making sure where the request is coming from, how much of a request or demand is it? What do you do to accommodate? Do you accommodate? And it just needs to be a dialogue because what everybody in these situations, people feel very strongly that what they're talking about is important, and so it's just a matter of making sure that everyone understands what is trying to be done and why it's being done, and that you make the right choices for the experience of the game. And it's all about looking at what that experience overall is, and if that choice is what's right for the game, then it's easy to look at that and say, as a group, yes, we feel like this is going to move us toward that experience or not, instead of, like Rusty was talking about earlier, my idea versus your idea.
There's a book by an author named Douglas Copeland called J-Pod. It's a novel, but it's a hilarious novel about just what you said. So if you have any downtime, check it out. It's really good. I read it a couple of years ago. Did I see we had a question over on this side? No? Far right. Oh, geez, I got to... Okay.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
My question was like, in comparison to like the technical designers and the systems designers, like what does the lead designer kind of do? Is he just like steering the ship, kind of delegating, or is he even getting in there trying to like help as much as you guys are in the different teams and stuff?
I think that's going to be a question that actually just varies by company to company. Culture plays into that. So in some cases, I've definitely been a part of teams where the lead designer, creative director, depends on even the title sometimes changes, but is largely kind of just trying to steer the ship and make sure everything is. It sometimes can bleed into a producery kind of role even in terms of like, are things getting done on time? So it really just varies. I think selfishly, I believe there's a lot of value in a person in a leadership role still having hands-on time in the development and being part of the team, because I think there's an important relevance there that helps inform your decision making. And so if you're too far removed for too long, your decision making potentially is flawed. But I mean, it's really hard to say. So I can say, for Volition, our leads, we don't even really have leads right now. We've kind of gone away from that in terms of we want, even though, like Jameson was saying, I shouldn't be speaking for you. You could speak for yourself. But like, obviously he's steering things and taking on leadership responsibilities. But it's not about the role. It's about making sure that you're contributing in the most impactful way that you can. So I don't know how that varies.
Bungie's pretty similar in that regard. We do try and have a rule in leadership that you don't spend more than 75% of your time running around to meetings, just corralling people. At least 25% IC work, independent contributor. That way you are always in touch with what's going on with the game, what decisions have gone into the game, what tools are working with the game.
I always refer to that as the ivory tower mentality. You have certain companies where there are people in the ivory tower telling the soldiers what to do, and they have never seen the battlefield. So yeah.
There is something interesting there, I think, though, and again, mileage will vary from company to company, but I've seen a lot of in lead design roles or creative director roles are because they were excelling as a designer or somebody on the team. They were overachieving, over-delivering, showing that they had that. And so the natural tendency for companies is to want to like kind of put them into more of a leadership role. It's like, clearly you know what you're doing, you have great ideas, but that then pulls them out of doing what they were doing so well at. And that's kind of the balance for companies, I think, that they have to be honest about, is like, you take one of your best people and put them in a leadership role, even with good intentions of like only max 75% of your time, that's still 75% of somebody's time, and that's a lot of time. Now, that doesn't mean it's bad, because that person can be completely impactful in that role and be able to, I love the sound mixing board kind of analogy of like, you can move a couple of sliders at a time, or you can move them all up if you need to at kind of an even pace. And that's what a good leadership person can do, is make sure that everything's kind of coming up together as it needs to. But you have to acknowledge that sometimes you lose one of your better people in terms of like the content that they're building or whatever. So yeah, it's a balancing act.
Well, and not everybody wants to be a leader too. Nope. So
that's right.
Yeah, I mean, okay, let's do one more from inside here, and then I have a final question that I'll follow up with. Yes, sir.
Yes, I guess this is more on the technical design side, but without divulging any, honestly, information you guys can't talk about, but can you give an example, like how you implement maybe a feature the dev side wants into like the systems or the tool sets itself, and kind of what that looks like from what they're requesting to like how you get it to be in the systems that they need?
Do you want? Yeah. So,
anyone?
I'll take that one.
That's a really good question, actually, because depending on the feature, the path or the roadmap can change because certain features will have lower level impact or integration needs with the engine. And so, up front, you need to kind of acknowledge that. Like, what are we really talking about? What is it going to take to do this right? That's a good place to start, is what is it going to take to do this right, and it not be something that's just bolted onto the engine, because that hurts your long-term sustainability. To go to Nick, your question earlier, if you're switching projects and that project is like a different IP or something and has different feature needs, then you're potentially building up all this technical debt that's going to be really hard to pay for later. So we want to try to approach it from like the architecture first and say, like, this is the thing, how would we really do this correctly? And what does that mean, even potentially refactoring of existing things to make sure that this integrates nicely? So there's all these questions you have to ask, but obviously there's also realities of timelines, and so sometimes you have to say, like, here's the concessions we're going to make, here's how we can do that. But it needs to start with, a good understanding of what is already there, because you can't build good architecture unless you understand how all the other pieces work. And I truly believe a lot of feature development, there's a tool side which is kind of parallel. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap, but if you're talking about a true like engine level feature, then it has to start with architecture. The discussion, I think, should, and that's a good foundational place.
I have seen a lot of cases where the conversation does not start with architecture, and it's very much an in-process development where it's very important to get people excited about your idea first, like flesh it out, take it to people and say, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? Well, can we prototype it? And hey, this is what it looks like. Everyone get excited about it. And then we sneak it in as a core feature.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna do one final question.
Ideal, what really happens? Yes,
Right.
It's usually that.
So one final question here, and it's mad wisdom time. Okay, and I want mad wisdom from you guys. This actually comes from Michael, who's in our game design Bachelor of Science degree, and we want to know what for somebody who's in, and I guess let's make it more of a generic for any degree program. What should students be doing while they're in school to help them be better rounded?
Better rounded.
Better, rounded, better prepared, all of that.
One of the things that I tell every student is when you come here, you have to be able to put 100% into this school and into what you're doing. I often get asked things like, should I do side projects, that kind of stuff, and I actually recommend no, just because anytime that you're putting into that, I feel like you could be getting better at the thing you're currently studying. So that's just a general philosophy thing for me from that angle. But becoming a people person, if you're not, is the absolute key. Like, no matter what you're doing, you need to be able to communicate with people. You need to be approachable. You need to be someone that people can trust. You need to be someone that people can know that they can come to when in any situation, and that they're going to get a conversation. And you start to do that by doing that as much as you can, practicing that, talking to anybody that you can, utilizing people like us. But in addition to your education, just focus on that angle and becoming a well-rounded communicator.
Beautiful.
I would say growing your analytical skill set. Become consumers of all the types of media you can, even the media types you hate. Learn what they're doing well, why they're doing it, and dissect how they're doing it. It's really important to be able to analyze what is successful and what's not successful too.
Okay, keep in mind, Russ, we only got... No, just kidding.
I knew that was coming.
I know this is, you like this topic, so.
I do. I think that I agree with what both Jameson and Ryan said wholeheartedly. Like, treat your education is your first job, especially in the full sail context, since it literally feels like a job in a lot of cases in terms of the schedule and all that stuff. So treat it like it's your first job, and that's a big mindset thing that will actually help you, I think, excel and get more out of what you're investing in. I agree that you don't want to become too distracted. At the same time, there is the reality of a lot of really valuable perspective is being freely released. So, getting things like UE4, Unity, getting your hands on those tool sets, don't let it become a distraction, or maybe part of the answer here is don't necessarily pick up whole side projects where you have schedules and obligations and stuff. But don't be afraid to dabble, because that will, one, it can help differentiate you a little bit, but I think to the question of what can you do to become more well-rounded in terms of what you kind of have to offer in your perspective, I think it can add a lot. Understanding how different tool sets work is kind of the same in terms of analytical of why you would want to play other games and kind of break those down, right? You want to understand what does this tool set do well? Why did they do that? And once you see that, for instance, with something like Unreal, you can kind of start to see the overlap when you go to break down the games that were made with Unreal. You're like, oh, I can see all this kind of coming together. So I think that's really valuable. So basically, do what you can to broaden your perspective. In terms of, I think a good way to sort of maybe focus that is to ask the question, what will give me more perspective? And if you think that investing some time in this will give you more valuable perspective, then it's worth your time. But just be responsible about how much time you invest in it, so that you don't end up.
We've now had a complete conversation with Rusty, because he's mentioned Google and he's mentioned Unreal.
That's true. Okay, yeah.
It's basically where I get all my go-to tech information is from Rusty's Twitter feed. So yeah.
I think for me, so I did an internal thing. I was thinking a lot about tech design over the last few years, because it's not something that is still, like we were saying earlier, really prevalent in the industry, but I think there's a lot of value there. And so I started trying to break it down, because people had asked, what are the skills that a tech designer needs? And it's well, it's kind of basic, it's you need to know, ideally, some programming, so you can break down both logical problems, but also do some of the work if you need to. And so for me, what it started to come down to is I realized there was more, its characteristics. And you guys got to this earlier, actually. And this is not an exhaustive list, but I wrote this down 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and have always held on to it. And when I look for technical designers in terms of hiring and stuff, what I'm looking for is a good fit for the role. And some of the things that I'm looking for is product focus, which is kind of all of what we've been talking about, analyzing things, researching, being familiar with other forms of media, because it all kind of comes together. Understanding why something that is successful, why it was successful, whether that's a movie, an album, a game, and being support focused or support driven is for me really valuable to tech designer, because there are certain people who will get a lot of fulfillment and empowerment out of enabling other people, but some people need to actually be delivering the thing. That's where they get their fulfillment. So that's a good indication of whether or not you might be more on the design side, or more on the technical side, or more on the programming side, or more the technical design. And another thing is, people who I think are empathetic kind of naturally are really strong technical designers, because again, it kind of goes to the support nature. And then, like Jameson was saying, communication is just absolutely imperative. To be able to communicate with multiple disciplines, be that liaison between them, help them cross their conversation barriers, or when you see, a lot of times it's in a meeting and you realize we've been talking for 10 minutes and nobody's understanding what anybody's saying. It's like coming in and saying, I think you're trying to say this, and I think you're trying to say this. Is that right? Everybody's like, yeah, okay, good. We can leave now, no? And then that innate desire to problem solve. Those are kind of the characteristics I think make up a tech designer. I just wanted to throw that out there, because I think that might help you if you're interested in tech design or design to figure out where do you want to invest that time. If you want to invest it in problem solving, well, then look for things that are logical that you can continue to break that down. And then some of the other ones are more kind of just fundamental, like personality things. So I don't really know where I'm going with that, but I thought it was important.
that was actually really great stuff, and I was thinking to myself as you were sharing that would make a good tweet. If you wanted to share that knowledge on,
sure.
So, man, thanks everybody for letting me moderate this panel. This has been incredible, and I want you guys to jump up off your feet and join me in thanking our esteemed guest here. So, all right, that's enough. All right, yeah. No, thank you guys all for coming, and especially those people online as well. For those of you that are here, hope to see you at 1 o'clock in 3F. And as they say, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, I think, or something like that. But thank you all for coming. Hi again, everyone joining us online. Thanks for sticking around for this exclusive Full Sail on-air moment with our guests, Rusty Sempsrott, Ryan Paradis, and Jameson Durall. We have a few pre-selected questions that you've been tweeting that our guests will be answering now. Guys, Kevin asked, if we have ideas, what is the best ways to bring them to companies?
That's interesting. I think we do a lot of looking at what our community feedback is and trying to make the game better and listen to everybody out there about what they're looking for. It always is, any idea that we see is we have to evaluate it against kind of what we're trying to move toward with the game and what the vision of the game is. But honestly, social media is a really good way. Our community managers are constantly looking for stuff and getting a pulse of the community about that kind of stuff. So putting that kind of stuff out there actually can get to us if it's a good enough idea. I've seen that happen before.
I would say find the company that you want to give that idea to and find a way to become a part of that company. Even if you're on social media, Twitter, Reddit, everyone is constantly throwing out ideas. Become part of the company you want to give that idea to, and then build that idea. Help shape that idea.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And go into that with an understanding of don't just pick a company. I would like to work for that company, and then once I'm part of that company, then I'm going to give them all my ideas. Make sure that your ideas are a good match, right? Because like we were talking earlier, companies have a culture, right, and a history, and that informs the ideas that they will entertain and not entertain. So you don't want to kind of set yourself up for failure if your ideas just are a complete collision with that company's culture or something. So understand, and if you don't know how to answer whether or not they're a good match, then you've got work to do.
Gotcha. Okay, Samantha asks, how do you notice someone's potential?
For me, a lot of that has to come from conversation, which is why I am thankful for opportunities to come back and talk to students and through social media and stuff. You can gain a lot of insight from just talking to somebody and asking them questions that will help kind of inform potential, because potential is some part skills, but it's also, like we were talking about, it's personality, it's how you approach working with other people, and so that all kind of comes into play. And some of that's hard to really get a read on until you're really talking to somebody. So that's where stuff like resumes and networking are really, especially the networking side, are really important to getting noticed, to getting those conversations started, and then from there, that's your platform to show your potential.
Absolutely. Your resume and your cover letter, they get you in the door, but from there, it's how well you communicate, what's your personality like, how well, are you a cultural fit with this company? That's one of the most important parts.
I agree with all of that, and more specifically for me, when having those conversations, it's about seeing the thought process. Is it when I can see how they solve a problem, then I can think about the problems that we face and how they may apply that to what they're going to do day to day for us.
Okay, thanks again, everybody, for participating. We look forward to you being a part of our next Full Sail on-air session. Have a great day.